If you work in Indian IT, or if you're planning to apply for an H-1B visa in 2027, stop what you're doing and watch this. H-1B registrations for fiscal year 2027 have dropped by nearly 50% compared to just 2 years ago. And the companies hit hardest? The big Indian outsourcing giants, Infosys, Wipro, TCS, HCL, the same firms that for years dominated the H-1B lottery. So the question everyone is asking right now is the era of Indian IT dominance in the H-1B program finally over? Let's break it all down. Welcome back to Immigration Radar USA, the channel where we track every major shift in U.S. immigration policy so you don't have to dig through government websites yourself. I'm your host, and today we are covering one of the most significant data points to come out of the H-1B program in years. Every spring, USCIS, that's U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, opens an online registration window for employers who want to sponsor foreign workers for H-1B visas. Employers pay a small fee, register their candidates, and then USCIS runs a computer lottery to randomly select who gets to move forward with a full application. This registration system was introduced back in 2020 to reduce paperwork and manage the massive volume of H-1B demand. And for the first few years, the numbers kept climbing. We're talking over 780,000 registrations in FY 2023 alone. But something changed, and the FY 2027 registration numbers, which USCIS released recently, are telling a very different story. Based on official USCIS data and reporting from major immigration news sources, today we are going to explain what happened, why it happened, and what it means for Indian IT workers and the broader immigrant community. Let's get into it. Let's start with the raw data because the numbers speak for themselves. In FY 2023, USCIS received approximately 780,184 H-1B registrations. That was a record-breaking year, nearly triple the cap, and it reflected an enormous flood of demand from employers worldwide. Then in FY 2024, the numbers dropped to around 758,994, still very high but slightly down. By FY 2025, registrations came down further. And now, for FY 2027, preliminary figures and industry reports are pointing to a drop of roughly 50% from the FY 2023 peak, bringing total registrations to somewhere in the range of 390,000 to 470,000. Let that sink in. In just a few years, H-1B registrations have been cut nearly in half. Now, does this mean fewer people want H-1B visas? Not exactly. To understand why this happened, we need to look at what USCIS changed in the rules. Here is the most important thing you need to understand about this drop. In previous years, the H-1B lottery had a major loophole. There was no rule stopping a single worker, called a beneficiary, from being registered by multiple employers at the same time. So if you were a skilled software engineer, Employer A, Employer B, and Employer C could all register you in the same lottery, tripling your chances of being selected. Large staffing companies, particularly some Indian IT firms and consulting companies, were accused of exploiting this. They would register the same candidate multiple times through multiple entities, flooding the lottery and giving their candidates an unfair advantage. USCIS responded with what is known as the Beneficiary-Centric selection rule, which went into effect for FY 2025 registrations and has now fully shaped the FY 2027 cycle. Under this new rule, it doesn't matter how many employers register a particular worker. Each unique beneficiary, each individual person, gets only one entry in the lottery. Multiple registrations for the same person are collapsed into a single selection chance. The result? Artificial inflation of the lottery is gone. The pool shrunk dramatically, not because demand disappeared, but because duplicate entries were eliminated. This is fundamentally a fairer system, but it hits certain companies much harder than others. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room: Indian IT outsourcing firms. Companies like Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL Technologies, and Tech Mahindra have historically been among the top H-1B sponsors in the United States. Year after year, government data showed these companies in the top 10, sometimes top 5, of H-1B approvals. Their business model in many cases relies on bringing skilled Indian workers to the U.S. on H-1B visas to staff projects at American client companies, a practice known as IT outsourcing or body shopping, depending on who you ask. Under the old lottery system, some of these companies, or staffing firms working with them, allegedly registered candidates multiple times to improve lottery odds. Now, that advantage is gone. Additionally, there have been increased scrutiny and site visits by USCIS in recent years. Officers have shown up at client work sites to verify that H-1B workers are actually doing the specialty occupation job listed on their petition, and that the position is real and legitimate. Some Indian IT staffing companies have reportedly seen higher rates of requests for evidence, RFEs. That's when USCIS asks for more documentation before approving a visa, and even denials at higher rates than American tech employers. The combined effect of the Beneficiary-Centric rule, tougher site visits, and stricter scrutiny has put significant pressure on the outsourcing-heavy model that Indian IT companies built their U.S. operations around. So if Indian outsourcing firms are losing ground, who is gaining it? The answer is American tech companies and universities. Firms like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Apple, and Cognizant. Yes, Cognizant is technically a US-based company, even though it serves many Indian-origin workers, continue to file large numbers of H-1B petitions. The key difference is that these companies are sponsoring workers for direct employment, meaning the worker works for Google, not for a client of Google. USCIS views this more favorably under current policy. Additionally, U.S. universities and research institutions are cap-exempt. They don't even need to go through the lottery. Workers sponsored by universities can get H-1B status year-round anytime. So the shift we are seeing is, the lottery is becoming more favorable for direct-hire tech workers and less favorable for outsourced IT staffing models. Now let's talk about what all of this actually means for you, whether you are an applicant, a current H-1B holder, or someone planning your immigration journey. Here is something that may surprise you. Even though total registrations dropped by 50%, the cap hasn't changed. USCIS still selects approximately 85,000 H-1B visas per year, 65,000 for the regular cap, plus 20,000 reserved for people with a U.S. master's degree or higher. So if registrations dropped from 780,000 to roughly 400,000, and the number of spots stayed the same, your individual probability of being selected has nearly doubled. For FY 2023, individual selection rates were somewhere around 14 to 16%. With the drop in total registrations for FY 2027, analysts estimate selection rates could be 25 to 35%, possibly even higher for master's cap applicants. That is genuinely good news for individual applicants. Let's be very clear here. Indian nationals can still apply for H-1B visas. The drop in registrations does not mean Indian workers are being excluded or targeted. What it means is that the pathway is shifting. If you are an Indian IT professional and you want to maximize your chances in today's H-1B environment, here is the honest truth. Working directly for a U.S. company, not through a staffing agency or outsourcing firm, gives you a stronger, cleaner application. Your job duties are clear. Your employer-employee relationship is straightforward. USCIS is less likely to issue an RFE or question whether your role qualifies. Workers at Indian IT staffing firms are often placed at third-party client sites, and USCIS has become increasingly skeptical of these arrangements because the employer-employee relationship can be complicated. Who controls your day-to-day work? What happens when one project ends and another begins? These are questions USCIS asks, and they can be hard to answer convincingly. So if you are currently working at an Indian IT outsourcing firm and you are on H-1B, or hoping to be, now is the time to think about whether a direct hire position at a U.S. employer might be a smarter long-term strategy. For Indian nationals, The H-1B visa is often just the first step in a very long journey toward a U.S. green card, and that green card journey is where things get really painful. Because of a legal rule called per-country caps, Indian nationals are subject to an enormous green card backlog. In some employment-based categories, the wait time is decades long. There are Indian engineers who filed for green cards in the early 2000s who are still waiting. Now, with H-1B approvals for Indian IT firms under pressure, some workers who never secured an H-1B may lose their chance to even start that green card process. And for those already in the U.S. on H-1B, if you're working for a staffing firm that gets shut down, loses its certification, or simply downsizes, your visa status can be at risk. Losing your job on an H-1B means you typically have 60 days to find a new employer or leave the country. That's a very tight window, especially when you may have a spouse and children here on dependent visas. This is why it's absolutely critical to have an experienced immigration attorney in your corner, someone who can advise you on portability options, job changes, and protecting your place in line. One more group that often gets overlooked: H-4 visa holders, the spouses and children of H-1B workers. Many H-4 spouses, particularly Indian women, have relied on the H-4 EAD, Employment Authorization Document, to work in the U.S. while their spouse waits in the green card backlog. The H-4 EAD program has faced legal challenges over the years, and its future has sometimes been uncertain depending on the administration. If your spouse's H-1B status changes due to layoffs, company issues, or visa complications, your H-4 status and work authorization could be affected as well. So if you're an H-4 holder, watch this space closely. Subscribe to this channel. We cover H-4 EAD updates regularly, and always consult an attorney if your situation changes. Whether you are an employer or an individual applicant, here is practical guidance based on where things stand today. For individual applicants, consider pursuing direct hire roles at U.S. companies rather than staffing arrangements. If you have a U.S. master's degree, make sure your employer registers you under the master's cap. It gives you 2 chances to be selected. Start the H-1B process early. Your employer needs to register you during the registration window, which typically opens in March each year. Keep your documents organized: pay stubs, contracts, educational credentials, in case of an RFE. For employers, work with a qualified immigration attorney to ensure your H-1B petitions are airtight, especially if you place workers at third-party sites. Be prepared for site visits and document that the H-1B role is a genuine specialty occupation. Consider whether your business model needs to evolve in response to USCIS policy trends. All right, let's bring everything together. Here is your summary of today's update. 1. H-1B registrations for FY2027 are down approximately 50% from their peak in FY2023, a massive drop that reflects the real-world impact of USCIS's Beneficiary-Centric lottery rule, which eliminated duplicate registrations by the same person. 2. Indian IT outsourcing and staffing companies have been among the hardest hit by this policy change. Their historical strategy of registering candidates multiple times through multiple entities no longer works. 3. For individual applicants, this is actually good news. Your personal lottery odds are significantly better than they were 2 or 3 years ago. 4. The path forward for Indian IT professionals increasingly favors direct hire employment at U.S. companies over staffing or outsourcing arrangements, and understanding this shift could make a real difference in your immigration strategy. 5. Green card backlogs, H-4 EAD protections, and job loss protections remain critical issues for Indian nationals already in the U.S. system, and we will keep covering every update as it happens. The H-1B program is not dying. Indian IT talent is not being locked out. But the rules of the game have changed, and the workers and companies who understand those changes and adapt quickly will be the ones who come out ahead. As always, nothing in this video is legal advice. For guidance specific to your personal situation, please consult a licensed U.S. immigration attorney. Thank you for watching Immigration Radar USA. If this video helped you understand what's happening with the H-1B program, please give it a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people find this channel. Subscribe so you never miss a breaking immigration update. Hit the bell icon so YouTube notifies you the moment we post. Drop your questions in the comments below. We read every single one, and your question might become our next video.